Hey everyone, welcome back to today's show. Today we've got a powerhouse guest, also my good friend, Mark Mr. Noots Effinger. He's the brain behind the groundbreaking nootropics company, Nootopia. And we're diving into how these cutting-edge supplements can supercharge your mind, boost your productivity, and maybe even change the way you think about brain health. Plus, we're going to explore the wild side of social media's impact on our brains. So if you ever wanted to monetize your mind and get more out of your day, this episode's for you. All right, guys, welcome to today's podcast. We have Mark, aka Mr. Noots, on the call with us today. We're going to get into a lot of interesting topics and some really cool stuff with brain-enhancing nootropics that we're going to get into later. But first, I want to really talk about something that I hold dear right now as a father. Social media and its epidemic upon the world, whether you look at it that way as a bad thing or a good thing, I want to hear your interpretation, but more specifically, the effects it has on our brains.
So what a great killer topic. I think of Jack Parr and some of the classic talk shows of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and how the really well-formed insight and idea became the catalyst for a whole movement. So social media, when I first got into it in 2003, 4, 5, we started with Twitter. And I was at a company called prweb.com at the time. And so we were the largest press release platform in the world. And we were a freemium. You could use a free press release. You could all the way up to $250. And we sold that company for $28 million in 2006. It started a decade prior to that. So it was a good exit.
Damn.
And David McGinnis, in fact, is the guy that headed that up, and the guy that founded that has become a close friend forever, and also has started a new thing called newsworthy.ai, which is an incredible platform for press releases, online press releases. So with that said, when my wife passed away, she died from oxycodone overdose. I tweeted, because I needed something cathartic to work from. And so I tweeted, I can't believe it's happening. This stuff is just stick a needle in her heart. And I had not expecting that anything would happen. Follower count wasn't a big deal back then, right? It was really a direct thing, maybe some news channels and maybe a couple of influencer type, what would now be considered influencers, but it wasn't a big deal. But one of the people on that was this guy named David McGinnis, who founded PRWeb. And I was on a BlackBerry at the time. And he said, "Brother, I'm so sorry. No worries. We got you." And he'd bought a jet when they sold a company. And so he flew his jet down and grabbed me and my kids and took us up to Bellingham and found a place for us to live. And it was incredible. But without social media, without that kind of thing, that wouldn't have happened. There's a bunch of relationships that I've developed that have been where social media has created this 0 degrees of separation between us and people who might be valuable to you, or you might be valuable to them, or there might be an incredible exchange. We call it an exchange in abundance. And that, I think, is the power play on that. But what's happened in the hijacking of brains, especially for our youth, because you don't have the maturity, you don't have the insight, you don't know how to balance it, you don't know how to get off the damn thing when you're playing, is it's hijacking the brain and causing a very minimized, almost brain damage. If you take a look at cognitive, if you take a look at brain development, if you're Dr. Amen and you're looking at the thin slice of the brain of a kid that's 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, who's been steeped in social media as a communication channel, where two things are happening, I think, that outside of the fact that the brain we're killing off certain parts of the brain, we're reliant on the dopamine fulfillment from a like or a friend or whatever happens to be the response mechanism that happens. That's causing this detrimental effect on the brain and putting us into a rat's maze of activity, right? Maslow, it's the Maslow's lowest level, and it's Pavlov's, ring the bell, get the food, ring the bell, get the food. And that food is dopamine. And so we're running in this dopaminergic circle. And when we don't have it, we feel less. We've used up a lot of the dopamine that's available normally, and so we feel depressed if we're not getting those things. And we're also willing to do almost anything to get it. So it becomes an addictive behavior that, in working with addicts over the last 20 years, you find that this addictive behavior thing is this driving force that they don't know how to get out of. And they don't know how to create another entity that helps to support that. They don't know how to take a deep breath and get inside. And that decaying of certain areas of the brain, prefrontal cortex activity and those things, is causing us to quit going deep on stuff and start going wide. So instead of the kids digging down into a subject that might be really, really valuable or instrumental in their growth and their future, they're going wide because wide gets you the quick response, right? It's the quick win instead of the deep, deep fulfillment of building a relationship. Did you ever do online dating, Joey?
I didn't do online dating. No, I passed that. I just went right into relationships.
Perfect. That's great. So from 2000, from basically the start of Match, 1999 to 2004, I was on Match.com was a preferred platform, and
that's where you look familiar.
Yeah.
I knew I'd seen you somewhere.
yeah, exactly. And it's the benefit was, if a date didn't go well, you already had 4 lined up.
Yeah.
So you don't worry about you don't dig deep to see if there's really something there. You get into that next kind of that transactional next phase. I have a good friend who at one time, he's a really good friend, a great guy, but at one time he was a salesman for one of our companies, and I called him coin operated. I said, "Hey Perry, you're coin operated," because he only did deals that were transactional, and as a result, he didn't build these deeper relationships, and he just moved on. And it was kind of a numbers game, kind of like think of stockbrokers and think about the Wolf of Wall Street, and they're just a boiler room with guys smiling and dialing. And that's what happens with social media, is you smile and dial, and because you get enough of a feedback, enough of a positive ping on your system from any kind of recognition. It can even be a shitty recognition on a thread in a post that you're involved in or something. But you get enough recognition, enough feedback loop, instantaneous feedback loop, that it keeps you fired up and you keep going. And the end result of that is a brain that doesn't know how to operate in long-term thinking. It doesn't have the endurance to do it. And it doesn't know how to create its own feedback loop of performance, like the Huberman-based feedback loop, right? Like between, you've got a task to take on and you're fighting Pressfield's resistance, right? The resistance is there and I'm not facing it down. I'm going and doing something else. I'm doing anything distracting me, which is what social media does. Instead of going, okay, I've got to attack this, so I'm going to go do something completely boring or that I hate, so that the task I need to do becomes interesting and exciting. And that's the thing that the dependence on social media, especially in our youth, has caused. So, I mean, Joey, when I was young, what did you do when you were like 8, 10, 12 years old? What were the things that occupied your time? What were the things that totally immersed yourself?
I mean, I was outside. I wasn't playing with rocks, but I was literally outside all the time, right? Like we didn't have curfews. We had like a come back when the sun goes down. But we did have Nintendo. I was obviously doing the NS64 and stuff like that.
Sure. But that's actually safer than social media to a certain extent. You know what I mean? Because I'm not a huge game guy. My game experience was when in 1986, I sold my first company, and the first thing I bought was a Macintosh and a laser printer and an inkjet printer and a scanner and everything I could, right? And around it, because I knew that advertising was going to be the key to my long-term success, and I loved advertising, and so I wanted to build an advertising engine. And my good friend Eric Kinney, still a good friend today, and he'd been in multiple businesses with me. He got me about $25,000 in hack software, in pirated software. So, and he loaded it onto my 20 megabyte hard drive That was a big hard drive in the day. There's no way you could fill up 20 megabytes. And he loaded up 2 folders. One was productivity software and one was games. And so I double click the games. I go in there and I start playing, Frogger and stuff that I would normally have on like a console type game they had for the Mac. And an 8-bit pixel, just crappy looking graphics, but it was awesome. And 4.5 hours went by. Like it was almost midnight and I'm at the office. I'm in my research and development room at the time. And I realized that if I just did that every night, one is my relationship with my then girlfriend who became my wife would be decimated. And we wouldn't have any talking points because I couldn't, I didn't want to get her a computer too, right? And the other was I realized that if I took that folder with all of these incredible games. My buddy was a gamer, big time. And I put it in the trash. I emptied the trash and I said, I'll bet I can make productivity software fun. And so I opened up it's called Digital Darkroom at the time. It was a precursor to Photoshop. And I scanned an image in and I manipulated the image. And then I grabbed a 3D software, Swivel 3D, and I made a 3D object and I made a 3D designed a product. And I did that in the same amount of time it would have taken me to play a game. And I realized that the exchange rate for, like here I am, I rejected computers in the late 70s when they first came out and they were available in my high school. And then I grabbed a Commodore VIC-20 and a Commodore 64 and a 128. But I never did anything but write some very basic programming. But here I had this opportunity, this power tool that I could enable and engage, and I could use it for good. And that good was maybe, just making my company grow. We became an Inc. 500 company in 1987, which, it was kind of funny because I got there through acquisition. My company was acquired and we became an Inc. 500 company because mine was fast growth, theirs was fast growth. And they were in business long enough because I was only in business 11 months at that time. Well, here, we fast forward, and when Bioptimizers acquired Web Nutrients to form Nootopia, the next year we become an Inc. 500 company. And it's kind of like this wonderful bookend on the business life. It's pretty great. But yeah, sorry, that was a distraction. But
no, that's awesome. But you mentioned a few key things. And because when I look at this, I look at the last 100 years, 200, 500 years of evolution of who we are. We didn't have access to all these things, first off, okay? We had deprivation of things. We couldn't access people across the world like we're doing today. Couldn't access products, medical help. All these things were deprivation. So now you introduce an abundance of everything instantly available at your fingertips. Like beyond the science, someone has to look at this and say, yeah, there's going to be repercussions from this. This is going to have a long-term effect, right? Like it doesn't take like a scientist to figure this out, although there are scientific backings to it. But I'm just looking at it going like, yeah, we moved from this state of like, we have nothing to everything. And now it feels great and we have access, which is awesome, provides a lot of opportunities. But, the point we're making today, I think it's like how it's affecting our brains and why do we procrastinate so much? Why do we wait on things? Why do we feel like crap half the time when we have access to everything? It should be the opposite, right? But our brains aren't wired that way. So there's almost like this negative resistance towards this, as well as these dopamine loops that gets created that creates dependency that then leads to transforming in your work and your life where you have everything, but now you're still miserable, right? It's like we're looking for misery in some ways. But what I want to ask too, because I don't think that we're doomed. I think that, like you said, there's a lot of great things social media does as far as connection goes. I mean, it's incredible, especially the story like with your wife and going through that and having somebody to reach out to. In the next 100 years, how do you see this going? If you were to predict the future a little bit, because you've got magic powers here, where do you see our brains developing into, or how do we integrate with social media, these dopamine things? How can we mitigate what's happening as far as bad things, but really enhance what's happening as good things?
So there's a great Canadian philosopher, I'm trying to remember his name, who said, who predicted kind of the rise of the technology infrastructure for media. I'll remember his name.
Wasn't Wayne Gretzky, right?
Yeah. No, but I do like to look where the puck's going, not where it's been, right? That's good. No, but he said, basically said there's 500 channels and nothing to watch. Right? And isn't that the dichotomy that we've got? We've got access to everything now. Before it used to take forever to build or buy or collect something or develop it. I built my first laser when I was 9.5, and I had to have the tube made. at a neon sign company. I had to grind the windows because the windows had to be at a very specific angle. I had to grind them myself with a grinding stone. And then I had to cement them with this very specific kind of 2-part epoxy with the window, and it had to be a very specific window. I could only get from a side, and I had to do all that. And then I had to build the power supply for it and all those things. And the mirror mounts, I had built the mirror mounts, out of micrometer screws and washers I got at the hardware store and magnet. It was just crazy. And you had to do all that. But isn't it gratifying when I turned that thing on and I got that little dim red dot 100 feet away in the garage and going, I did it, right? How do you build that kind of persistence into our neurology without, overdriving it with Adderall or something like that, with some kind of a hyper dopaminergic, compound. And when you take a look at this kind of short-term gratification issue, the endurance is one thing, the persistence is one thing. We talked about Stephen Pressfield a little bit ago where, he talks about the resistance being anything that keeps you from doing the thing that you were made to do, the thing that you were empowered to do, the thing that, God gave you to do is the resistance. You want to start a company, it's time to go do the dishes. You want, right? And I think what we're losing and this being increasingly worse is we're not recognizing very few people, the upper 1%, maybe some of the upper 1%, I shouldn't say. Money doesn't give you class, right? But when you grow up in an environment that recognizes aesthetic and recognizes, which is actually part of our company, right? Optimizers, insight. Aesthetic is one part of the pyramid, one part of the triangle that is the stool of our support system. But when you don't recognize the difference between, you don't buy a Bugatti because the label looks great and you can show it off to your influencer friends. You buy a Bugatti because you understand that engine was hand pieced together by these really, really good machinists and that it's going to last for 500,000 miles easy. It costs $400,000 or it costs 1.5 million if it's a Veyron or something like that. But it's quite a piece of engineering and a really beautiful piece of handmade, machine. And I think it's really important to kind of recognize that when we started doing, and that we're losing that. I can go to Amazon. I can see a product. I can go to Temu and get it for 1/3 the price.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like the same thing, doesn't necessarily represent the same thing. When we started Nootopia, our capsules look like this, handmade. And the reason they were handmade was because we didn't have enough data points yet to be able to figure out we had I think at the time we had a little over 10 million data points. We didn't have enough data to be able to say these different nootropics or these different ingredients or these compounds and extracts are going to positively affect 90% of the people. They might do 30% or 35%. And so now we had to adjust everything for every customer. Now that we have maybe 100 million data points, we figured out how to kind of dial in that and make it so that I can give you a product. I guarantee that thing is going to work. And that's that combination of nuanced individual design and development and mass scale and data mining where you can actually combine the two. The problem is that if you squint your eyes, you can't tell the difference between that beautiful, bespoke, handmade guitar and one that comes out of a a Chinese manufacturing plant at a rate of 20 a minute, because they're both kind of look a lot alike, and they maybe even have some of the same pickup technology, or the pots might be smooth or whatever, but there is a difference. If you've ever been to a luthier's shop, which I have, I've been to the Seagull shop that was in Santa Cruz, and they were making these beautiful handmade cutaway acoustics. And you saw the way that he planed the wood, and you saw the way that he did the matched pairs to make it so that a flame top would be these beautiful, it spreads from the center, and the way he cut the F hole or he cut the side holes up here. And then how he listened to every component as he assembled it to make sure it had the right resonance so that when it was finally assembled, it would be flat response across the board. So it wouldn't be too boomy, wouldn't be too tinny, and how he put the lacquer on, all of those nuances. We've lost that. And that was the plot. America was the great, I don't want to go on the American manufacturing rant, but America was the great manufacturing place in the world because we cared. When we nuked Japan back in World War II, we came back to them, Thompson and some of the great manufacturing technologists of our time, and we said, here's how you go from making cheap little tin toys to making great things. And companies like Lexus came out of that, right? And Toyota and Nissan and Mazda, and they made presentable vehicles, and then they made better versions of those presentable vehicles, and now they make this world standard in vehicles. By the way, I just found out what Lexus means.
Oh yeah, care to share?
Are you ready? So Toyota was having a hard time getting recognized for anything more than the Corolla, kind of a low cost, very reliable. You could get 300,000 miles out of it, but it wasn't the car that you wanted to show your friends, and you would never talk about, I've got a Lexus Sport, right? And the closest thing to anything performance was the Supra line that they had, and those were, dodgy at best. Their suspension was soft, and they had a pretty decent engine, but still. So they were at a show, and they realized that it wasn't the car that was the problem; it was the brand name. And so Lexus is luxury export to the U.S. Lexus. And so what they did is they created a new brand. They did slightly nuanced fit and finish. They went after Mercedes and BMW, and at the time Infiniti, because Infiniti and Toyota got wind of Nissan, which was, Nissan was also a low-cost Japanese brand, making this really, really cool luxury car to compete with Mercedes. And Toyota was not going to be beat by their cohorts in Japan. And so that's how that came about. Anyhow, I live in the Rust Belt. I live in the Midwest, right on the Mississippi. It's right over there. And they called it the Rust Belt. It used to be called the Steel Belt because we used to make stuff. It's the Rust Belt because we no longer make stuff, and all of the manufacturing plants are literally rust buckets. They're falling in on themselves. You go to Detroit, it's a dangerous place to walk. And it's, the great manufacturing plants of General Motors and Ford and the rest are just rotting. There's a really incredible opportunity, Joey, for us and our youth to get back to some of the essentials of tangible things that have meaning, machine shops that make cool stuff. We've got one in the first floor here where Mr. Robot makes cool robotic technologies for us and innovations for, our exercise technology and our making our complex products. And I like to focus on opportunity. We have to address the problem. The problem is we have no cognitive endurance. We have no physical endurance to be able to go through these things. And we need to correct that. That's a biochemical thing that we can change with things like nootropics that we do. And with good biology, I'm wearing a full-time CGM now.
Nice.
So what a game changer. I don't know if you've done it before, but I'm using a
I've not, but dude, I do want to.
It is, are you training? Are you lifting right now, or?
Come on, man, look at me. No, of course I'm training. You can't tell because I'm just like in a black shirt and I'm just a head, but yeah, I'm training.
Well, your shoulders are cut off by the screen, so I figured you did some. Yeah. And so I got it because we're evaluating a bunch of products. We've got our berberine breakthrough, our blood sugar breakthrough becoming berberine breakthrough. But if you take a look at every one of our solutions, and if you take a look, I'm an athletic person. I train daily. I also work out with really obscure technologies like exercise with oxygen therapy and I do binaural audio meditations every day, and I these kind of obscure things that make a pretty profound improvement in my life, and they also have really helped me get out of some really tough situations physiologically and neurologically. But if we're not, but what this allows me to do is look inside my body at a minute by minute basis, or a 4 minute by 4 minute basis. I think that's the scan cycle. and look at what everything is affecting me from a blood glucose level, not necessarily from an insulin level, but from a blood glucose level. And I can see where my insulin sensitivity is at. I can see what foods jack things up, what drinks jack things up, how to manage that, how to go from, I was averaging 122 to 128 blood sugar. 100 is what you want to be at, right? And that wasn't like, it was close enough to pre-diabetic, and I'm going, holy shit, I'm an athlete and this is happening? What, and I think I eat pretty well. Like I like sushi, and I eat, as much organic food as possible. We get grass-fed beef and those kinds of things. And Chastity's an incredible chef when it comes to that. But I wasn't, my body wasn't responding the way that I thought it would. And then started tweaking it. And actually blood sugar breakthrough has been a game changer for me. And I figured out how to take it. Now I'm optimizing it. I'm tweaking it with a little bit more dihydroberberine and individual caps and doing the stuff that biohackers do. And I can now anticipate, regulate, and optimize my performance around these things. The ebbs and valleys, the peaks and valleys of my performance throughout the day, energy management, as Tony Schwartz would call it. My energy management is much flatter now. It doesn't have these massive peaks and valleys. Yeah, I don't know. Do you know who Tony Schwartz is?
Yeah.
So the Energy Project, his stuff, and Jim Lohr, as a former, competitive tennis guy, Jim Lohr was hugely impactful in my insights. And then seeing him say, hey, this applies to business, and great athletes perform like this. And so I kind of had that, oh, that's right. That's how you approach things in a way to manage energy, not manage time. And very powerful. But I think we have a really, you and I and the people that we get to work with and play with, and our expanded group are people that are customers and our friends and associates and people that believe in that health and wellness have a monumental impact on our lives. We have an opportunity to be kind of a true north for how to make these instrumental changes that will take us from a dopamine impacted society to one that maybe has significantly more endurance, has the ability to quiet the mind and to be able to get into a egoless or low ego state of performance, and also to have the qualities necessary to follow through on ideas and concepts and principles and work and love and life and spirituality, that if we don't optimize ourselves, we will struggle for the length of our lives in trying to achieve any state of satisfaction and joy, because we're too short.
Yeah, well said. There's a lot of profound things that you were mentioning there, but the last one was really like getting off the hamster wheel. I mean, we're continuously chasing the next thing, but not really ever getting there. And that's nothing to do with our actions. Well, it is, but it's more to do with behavior, what's happening in the brain as to like why we're chasing those things. I'm still stuck on you building a laser at 9 years old. So I just wanted to, say that was incredible, because I was going to be like, hey, Mr. Noots, what's something interesting about yourself? But you answered that one. I think that no one else is building lasers at 9. And, I think that what's worth noting too, so both Mr. Noots and I work with Bioptimizers and Nootopia through the extension of Bioptimizers. And it's been transformational to work since 2014 with the company on leveling up my mind through supplementation, which supplements that work, and with biofeedback that you can measure. Because if you can analyze it rather than just thinking something like, placebo effects and things like that we all get trapped into, there's power in supplementation with the right ones. And it's not about creating dependencies. It's about rewiring the brain with enhancements that you can use that are natural, safe, and like non-addictive. So one thing though that it's always in my mind, because whenever I talk to people and we kind of talk about the products and like, I'm trying to give them like, how powerful and profound it's been to be on some of these products. They're like, oh yeah, don't worry. I take like, Bang Energy or Monster. And so talk about like, and we're not going to bash any brands. I'm not like, I don't care. If you like that, that's cool, do your thing. But I know that there's some detrimental ingredients, effects, and it's kind of amplifying the existing state of mind that you're in, and not necessarily in a good way. So like, can you just talk about a little bit of like the products that are out there today that are on the shelf and easy to get and everyone's using, everyone thinks that they're great because the top influencers are out there marketing it because they're equity partners with them.
Right.
Again, don't have to bash anybody, but I just want to turn the attention to like what is potentially an inferior quality product that's not actually delivering the results as to what we're trying to fix here.
Yeah, boy. And I'm 100% with you on that, because it's hard to make great product at scale. And so I have and also a lot of these guys, even in the companies that we would, we kind of write off as one-hit wonders. Often their intention was good, but when they got into the process of trying to make it at scale or make it real, became problematic. I think of some of the greens products where there's a process called micronization. When you take vegetables and fruits and you dry them out, and then you grind them into a very fine powder so that it breaks through some of the cell wall stuff. Like in mushrooms, it's called chitin, which is this hard shell that your body can't digest. And that's why you need to grind mushrooms, either take them fresh and, heated, right? Like cooked in oil, in oil or in butter, or take them ground. The problem is when you grind, say, greens to the point where they're micronized, which is where they're most bioavailable, they're also least effective. The problem is, and I think, I'm not going to, let's just say AG1 might have a problem with this, is two things. One is that you end up getting heavy metal, a lot of vegetation grown at scale has heavy metal problems, especially if it's grown in the wrong country or the wrong environment. So that's a big problem. The other is when you micronize it, you get rid of the fiber. You basically take the fiber down to nothing. And so it has minimized fiber content. So your digestive tract treats it differently. And so oftentimes you're missing a lot of the key components that made the vegetable in the first place valuable to your body. So that's one. We could talk about artificial sweeteners all day. And what we're learning right now, so we're working with protein sweeteners here at Bioptimizers and Nootopia, because protein sweeteners and monk fruit are kind of the two that we use, because we don't want to be jacking your glucose levels and suddenly creating an insulin imbalance and having those problems where your body's got to try to keep up with this thing that you've introduced it. But those are another problem. And some of these artificial sweeteners, as well as these natural sweeteners at reduced levels, even, they still affect your blood glucose and bad levels. I'm speaking. I'm like the new spokesperson for NutriSense, but but it's a big problem. And then the other is like gummies. Gummies is a great problem. The challenge with gummies, I've got a boatload of gummies over here that we've tested. We sent them to our Bosnian lab. We've got 21, I think, PhD candidates and a couple of PhDs in. We basically sponsor a university wing in microbiology and research, and it's incredible. Super bright people, Monia and her team, and Janan and Muammar. And what they do for us is they basically dissect everything, every raw ingredient we have. And two things that we've learned that are super critical outside of like, are they caustic to the body, or are they caustic in the bloodstream, or are they even effective, is if I send 10 raw ingredients from 10 separate vendors from 10 different parts of the world, and we send them to Bosnia to go do an analysis to find out where the key molecule that we want, or key molecules we want in that extract, what levels they are. We get a thing called a COA, or a certificate of authenticity, from every one of those vendors that says, we guarantee this product has this characteristics, has no heavy metals, or below measurable account, and has these molecules in this proportion. Out of 10, we will get 8 that won't measure that. In fact, we'll get 8 that won't measure that, and we'll get 2 to 3 that don't even have that molecule in them, unmeasurable. And so one of the big challenges that these folks have, which we have as well, and we've cured it by going and sponsoring a university and getting his research, right, and sending every raw that we do through that before we even start compounding it here in our R&D lab here in Iowa, is they're compounding with ingredients that have a COA that looks good, but unless they do another test of it, they're gonna They're not going to know. And so you're getting a lot of these products that they have very little of the active ingredient that you're buying on the label. In the case of gummies, like I did these, there's a product called Create, which is a creatine gummy. And I love I think the company's great, and I think they've done a great job with the product. Problem is when you introduce creatine, I'm sure you use or have used creatine in the past, and if you're not using it right now as part of your bodybuilding regimen, incredible product, right? And now they're finding all the cognitive enhancing product components of it are really critical as well. And if you get a chance, especially if you do any kind of cyclical ketosis or full-on ketosis, combine that with BHB salts or acids, ketone acids, it's a game changer. It's incredible. So, but a challenge is that when creatine hits water, it begins very quickly to become creatinine. Creatinine is the component that your liver has to excrete, your kidneys have to excrete to get it out of the bloodstream because it's not good. It's the metabolite of creatine. So when creatine does its work, the thing that comes out of that work, where it's actually done its work, is creatinine. Well, when you put creatine in a gummy and it goes through the gummification process and the water in there, more than 40% of that creatine that went into the gummy is now creatinine. So not only are you getting 40% less creatine than is on the label, but you're getting 40% more of this metabolite that your body needs to get rid of that has a negative impact on the body. And those are some of the things that people don't think about, or they do a gummy B vitamin, or they do a multi-gummy, or it looks great. They're glad their kids are doing a 1-a-day gummy vitamin. My kids are on vitamins. No, the B vitamins in those are destroyed in the process, almost all destroyed. And so it's really critical. And gummies are the fastest growing delivery technology right now for vitamins in the industry. So the industry's going crazy on it. And the other thing I would have you do is, of course, check your blood sugar after doing gummies. So those are some of the critical negative things, and even like I'm doing this protein drink, right? Splash. So,
okay.
Right there. So yeah.
Shout out to
good.
Splash.
Yeah, there you go. So a great protein drink. I think they got a killer job with their flavors and things, but it's got some artificial sweetener in it. I needed something to drink while I was up here with you. So that's why I got it. All right. So I'm not.
I'm just having espresso.
Otherwise, I got to do a Cohiba. I'm not going to do a Cohiba, so we're going to do this.
Not yet. The day is early, Mark. But what I love about Mark and Mr. Noots and all the avatars that you have and Nootopia and other companies, your shit. And this is what people fail to realize is, first of all, the supplement industry has a really bad name. When I talk to people about what we do, it's like, oh, we're supplement brand. And it's like, oh, I take a supplement. I'm like, yeah, you probably do, but it's probably, and I could go into the science, but ultimately you want your $20 GNC, whatever you're getting, and feel good. Great. Get the placebo effect. But I love that we've done the science on it, and that you can speak to it so eloquently and with so much research and experience beyond any other company out there. So whenever people ask me, do you trust the products? And I'm like, I don't really have to even trust the product. I trust the person behind the product. No, honestly, it's like Matt, he tells me to take pills sometimes. I'm like, okay, cool, take it. I don't know. What are these? First time I met Matt, that's how we met. He's like, we're going to do a 1-day, it was a planning session in Panama. And he just comes up to me and he hands me 10 pills. He's like, take these. I'm like, okay. Because I trust Matt. And I know that he researches, and it's like having an advisor within a product and within a company that not a lot of brands have that type of backing. I think that's super important. And the gummies too. It's like everyone loves gummies. Who doesn't? It's like a candy, but are you getting anything from it? And it's like cool if you just want to chew a gummy, but don't think you're actually going to get a benefit from that particular gummy unless, like you said, it kind of doesn't go through those processes. And maybe you have somebody that can advise you on which one to actually get. So I want to talk about, I want to flip the script a little bit because, again, anybody who's seen the Bradley Cooper movie Limitless, I kid you not, whenever I started to take Nootopia, at first I was a bit skeptical in terms of what is this going to do? Is it going to actually do something? Am I going to feel effects from it and all these things? And I've got some Xamarin juice here, which I spray constantly throughout the day.
Good man.
And, I'll talk about the product more in a second, but I just want to let's frame it a little differently. Who has been, or what has been the highest price point that you've sold a nootropic for when you've done customizations for like high clients, like CEOs or entrepreneurs who've come to you and say, Mark, I want my own nootropic. Charge me anything. How much have you charged? And you don't have to say the name, but just upwards of how much money here.
Well, it's actually pretty fun and pretty funny. The first one was very shortly after we opened our doors, and my tip of the hat to Bradley Cooper. He actually became the unbeknownst to him spokesperson for our venture into nootropics, right? And every time the movie Limitless opened up in a different country, we would get a surge of orders from that country. But the first one was the founding team of Napster.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Napster.
And you remember Napster?
Oh yeah, man. And then they ruined everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, but those of us that play the axe, it's like, dang it. But yeah, that was a couple of $1,000s, and then a tag on for multiples, and then actually Matt Gallant, the co-founder of Bioptimizers, when we met on a Facebook post of a good friend of mine.
Not a dating app.
Not a dating app. Yeah, the other dating app. A good friend of mine, Brad Costanza is a kind of a leadership executive coach, and he was pouring out our products, and Matt saw it and said, "Can you hook me up with that guy?" And so we had a call, and we had a call a month later or so, and it was really nice. And Andy was on the call as well. And as you know, Andy, 007 Andy. So nothing's more seductive than having a Brit on the call interjecting once in a while. And he started buying tens of thousands of dollars worth of product every month. And he did it for like 4 months and said, let's join forces. And that was pretty profound for me. And then the other ones have been, we serve some guys at the largest talent management company in North America. We some of their leadership and some of their performers. And then and there's a bunch of guys like Mark Manson. Mark Manson.
Yeah.
He's been a customer, and we've a bunch of other kind of I guess you'd call them the new. Are they the nouveau riche? But they're the cool guys that are. Mark's the guy that did what was the name of his first book?
The Subtle Art. Was that it, or was it something different?
Yeah, Subtle Art. Yeah.
Of Not Giving an F.
Yep. It was great. What a great book. Yeah. And I got that on audiobook. I thought it was really good. And the cool thing about these people that are super performers, like, there's a boatload more of those people. The first guy that actually convinced me to do this because he wanted the products for himself was the chief photographer for Sports Illustrated. And, I met him while I was on a date with a girl back in years ago. And he was the ex-boyfriend of my date. And so she said, "Hey, you should meet this guy." And we did. And he was out to shoot. He was shooting the next day, or like 48 hours later, he was shooting Pistorius, the sprinter, the guy with the carbon fiber legs. Mm-hmm. For an Olympic photo shoot for Sports Illustrated. And he texted me from South Africa and said, "Dude, this shit rocks." This guy has 20 handlers and I couldn't even see them. I was so focused and I got the job done. I got the shot. I need more. And then he just bugged me for about 3 months until I finally relented. So they're, these products are pretty instrumental, but there's been a lot of people. One of the things that was really interesting to me that I didn't realize was that there were two classes of people that were buying the product at first. There were the people that there were kind of the biohacking was just becoming a term. It was 2012. And it was just kind of, Dave Asprey was just kind of pseudo launching it was really a forum at that time. It wasn't even the bulletproof product yet. And so he built he took a classic forum software and he let other people build his content. And then he would just interject and he would direct it the way he thought it would be. Very smart, very smart. But the people that were engaging with our product the most, and they were like religious and they would subscribe. I didn't have a subscription engine. They would subscribe. Were biohackers or people that knew the difference between how you wake up and what you can be when you wake up. And the others were already established high performance artists, musicians, CEOs, athletes, educators, students, professors. Some of them were on my beta test. My beta test was over 1,100 people for 4 years. And they were people that absolutely wanted that 1 or 2 or 5% difference. They were already training. They were already, they were the 4 a.m. crowd, right? Or the 5 a.m. crowd. And they were already high performance individuals, and they wanted that tiny little next margin, or they couldn't believe that they could get a significant margin. And that was the thing that we were able to do with them, was to go, okay, we can tweak this and make it really, really effective for you, because you've got too much adrenaline, you've got enough dopamine, but you don't have enough serotonin, and your GABA levels suck, and your sleep, isn't good. And so we would put these kits together that would handle, just like my shirt says, here's a the mind, body, energy, sex, and sleep. Yeah. And so, because once you get those, right? Yeah. Once you get those things down, everything else goes well. And I think this is a huge subject, Joey. I think that most people don't know what it feels like to feel great.
Oh, that's deep.
Right?
It's true. Yeah.
They're walking around, they're a bit in a stupor or in a daze or in a fog, and maybe they've had an environment, or they don't remember when they were 8 years old and they bounced out of bed and they were playing before they didn't have a routine yet. They just got up, played ate their Cheerios or whatever and went for it. And that's missing. And I'm 63 years old, and I so freaking love waking up. I love watching that sun crest. I'm very fortunate to have a place that overlooks a river, and so I get the sun on the other side of the river. I'm facing east, and I had my dogs attack me first. As soon as they see me move, the dogs are in full attack mode. But and then and I've got a gym in my basement, so I get to work out there as well, or grabbing my bike and take off across to the airport and zoom around. But when you have that, when you know the difference between mediocrity and absolute bliss of feeling great about your day, what happens is you become uneffable, right? People can't mess with you, because what you realize is that the depth of whatever crap is going on in your life, we all have crap going on in our lives. The depth of the crap going on in your life will always result in something greater and more positive once you go through it. So once you know that, and if you know that as a percentage, the outcomes in your life are, lean towards the positive, or they can, depends on how you define things. And if you don't care about the outcome, if you're not rigidly concrete melded to the outcome, and instead you have almost this kind of hands-off approach saying, I know great stuff happens to me. I wonder what cool stuff is going to happen out of this. What's going to come of this? What I found as a percentage is the outcome of that is better than I could have scripted. If I script it and I'm locked into it and I have to have this outcome, then I might get that, and I might get slightly less than that or whatever, but it's never better than that. But if I don't script it and I allow the freedom, I still have an objective. I still write down my goals. I still want, there's some concrete things I want, but those concrete things happen on the way to something greater. Those events that I'm really, really think are important or valuable to me or to my friends or whatever, those become milestones on the way to something better that I didn't project, I didn't understand, I didn't know, right? I don't have that insight necessarily. And part of it is having dialogue with people like yourself who have a different angle on life, who have had these different experiences, and asking questions and being willing to ask the stupid question, because, right? And having somebody support you. You and I have both had incredible dialogue with our partners who are really mentors to a certain extent, Matt Wade and Andy and all the folks in our company and even outside the company who get a view. Nuria, who is a VA for Matt and myself, a virtual assistant for Matt and myself, lives in Costa Rica, speaks with a beautiful accent, is learning how to run now. She's taking on 5 and 8K runs and even a 10K run. And she's like a mentor, man. If I'm, shit's going down and I'm not happy with the way things are, she calms me. She goes, Mr. Noots, we'll take care of it, Mr. Noots. Right? It's just great. When you're open to the input that is available to you of friends, family, your dogs, your coworkers and associates, and the person you met at the coffee shop, and the girl in line at the grocery store, and the checker, if you just are open to the input, I think you'd be amazed at what, at the size of the outcomes in your life and the fullness that you get as a result of that. So off the soapbox.
Well said. And for the past 6 months, I've been working with a new life coach, spiritual advisor, business strategist. He's kind of like all the above rolled into one. And I'd lots, not to go on a spiritual tangent, but spirituality and faith are a little bit different, or at least a religious-based faith. And what I stopped doing for a long time, and I kind of lost touch with it, was just the openness and the interpretation of things as like everything's happening to me versus everything happening for me. And at first that sounds kind of woo, because things happen sometimes. You're like, well, how is there a meaning to this? But if you have an open awareness to it, you're curious to it, and sometimes you're triggered by it, but you notice that that's just a thought. Thought isn't you. It's just a thought that exists. And you dissipate that. And then, like you said, you kind of just openly welcome anything coming in your life. You're going to receive a lot more miracles in a lot of your days versus always expecting the worst. You're going to attract that. So I think that that's super profound. And, one of the things that I look at is the journey of where everyone goes in their health, or whatever it's fitness or cognitive or career, being open to things you're hearing. And if today, like on the podcast, we're talking about nootropics a little bit on like cognitive functioning and things like that. If at first you're like, oh, geez, resistance, like, I don't know about this. And it's like, be aware and open of this is coming into your life at the right time, potentially, and to, give it a shot. Because at first, when I got introduced to nootropics, I was like, oh, is that a drug? Like, what is this thing? And I had a lot of defense mechanisms because my ego was kind of coming into it. So it's not to say just blindly take pills from people like I did. Maybe I went a little bit too extreme, but I think that there's a timing for things rather than a time. You know what I mean? Like, so I might make a plan for something, but I can't necessarily say how long something's always going to take. But I think the more important thing is the timing of when things show up in your life. And I think, whether it's a mentor, whether it's somebody that you look up to, or somebody that touches your heart or your life in a way that has a significant impact over time, those things are going to be coming to you if you're looking for them, rather than thinking that you're a victim of everything. So, kind of a tangent on things, but we could go into a whole new episode on that mindset.
Joey, I think that's instrumental. And to wrap it back in and put a bow on the nootropics part, one of the challenges people have is that we're out of chemical balance. And just like this, the dopamine hits we talked about that our kids are getting on a minute by minute basis. And by the way, I've been guilty as well. Once I discovered Facebook, and I act like an extrovert, but I'm really an introvert who also realizes that I love people. I just don't, I expend a lot of energy in when I'm in dialogue in those things. But if you don't feel good, if you're out of balance, it's difficult to have the engagement and the belief that things are great. And so what I believe that nootropics are as much as they're, a focusing agent or a high performance, natural solution to handling a bunch of cognitive things, I think they're a state change optimization tool. So do I want to feel better? Am I having a what appears to be a crappy day, or are my hormones are wonky today, or I didn't get to sleep last night for some reason or whatever, and so I'm in a crappy mood? I might take something like an upbeat to restore some of my serotonin levels and dopamine without jacking me up. And suddenly I feel better. Well, now that I feel better, I operate better. My output is better, meaning the things that I'm producing, the valuable final products that are things that move my company forward, what we do forward, get better. Or if I'm having a really scattered day, I might do an ultimate focus. Or if I need to be in a kind of a Zen state, but I need to be aware, like I need to have this kind of smooth, egoless, not foggy, very crystal clear, but I need to be really aware. I might do like a mushroom breakthrough or something like that, where I'll put it in my coffee as a way to kind of make a nice mocha out of it.
Having it right now.
I love it, man. It's one of my faves. One of my faves. I live on it. And so, again, not from an anti-addiction platform, is knowing that you can get into a specific state by taking this solution, and knowing that it actually has very long tail effect. Like some of the things we make, all of the things we make that are nootropics, have a long-term benefit to your brain and body. So it's not just something you take and you get in that state for that moment. That's it. It's something you take, you get in that state, and then you can do what you want with that state. If you want to build new neural pathways around that state, close your eyes for a moment and focus on how you feel at that moment and how your brain is operating, how you just got that word that you were searching for and suddenly it came to you, or that thought that was a million miles away suddenly came into focus, or that fear suddenly dissipated, or that, that motivation suddenly flooded you. You feel flooded with motivation, right? And you feel like, and it's not instantaneous. Actually, you can feel it's long term. Go embrace that feeling, that emotion, that state, and build that state into you. And by doing that, one is you're going to realize you're not reliant on that solution to get there. You can actually close your eyes or open your eyes and get into that state as needed. And that's a really, really key thing to understand. When I started doing these solutions, it took 4 years and 3,000 prototypes to get here. But when I finally got the one that worked, we called it NZT because, of course, the movie Limitless, is it was a drink and then there was a capsule that went with it. You took the drink and the capsule 2 different times and it worked great. I finally found something that took my ADHD and gave me a place to play with it. It didn't control me anymore. I got to control it. And it wasn't because, and I had done Adderall before. One of my employees loved it. And so he would bring me his prescription, 20 milligram. And I would take it and he would give me, 10 or 20 caps or pills. I would just take one, right? And then if somebody came into my office, I would bite their head off because the way that kind of, epinephrine, adrenaline, and dopamine combined acted for me, I became an asshole. And they would literally go, "Oh, you're on the asshole drug. I'll talk to you in 6 hours or 8 hours." So, yeah, it was great. But in this state, what you can do is you can get into state. The state is not, we don't hijack your brain. We take and we give you the nutrients necessary for your brain to create the neurotransmitters you need to operate at a level that is considered performance in a balance that your brain can create based on signaling molecules. It's a long sentence, but if you follow each of those little key points, we give you the raw product, very specific nutrients and extracts and the rest. We get it through the blood-brain barrier, which is this little filter at the base of your skull. We get it into your brain, and then we signal your brain to break it apart into the key neurotransmitter precursors, and then we signal your brain to create those neurochemicals from these raw components that are precursors at the rate that your brain can use it effectively without causing any level of toxicity or any other detritus or any other issues that might arise. And to do that with the half-life necessary for you to complete the things that you need to complete. So you are in charge and you get to manage and monitor the process. We give you all the raw product and we give you the kind of signaling tools necessary to execute on those. And that's the difference between this and going and downing, an 8-pack of 5-hour energy or Red Bull. And again, you have various states. You've got a loving state. Like that's available through nootropics. You can get into a loving state. That thing that you're doing, the Xamarin juice, right? And GABAlicious, those help your GABA receptors be more sensitive, and then they provide the precursors to GABA, the neurotransmitter. So you feel more open, you feel more social, and you feel more less fearful and less protective. Really, really powerful. Think of it as a martini without the buzz. And so you get those things. If you want to have the follow through, but you don't want to feel like a jerk like I did on Adderall, Dopa Drops can be a really great solution to getting you in that state. But what's better is that when I designed that, it was a 3-part release. So I said, okay, let's give you directly some L-Dopa, and let's get your system to convert it into dopamine. Let's get you the precursor to L-Dopa, and we'll get you the cofactor that turns that into L-Dopa that becomes dopamine. Let's get the precursor to that becomes L-tyrosine, which is a precursor to that, which is also dopamine and norepinephrine, noradrenaline, and then becomes L-Dopa and then becomes dopamine. So you got these three stages. So it's flowing dopamine into the synapse, not hijacking the synapse with dopamine and adrenaline. And it does this really smooth. So you feel great. You feel great all day. It's good. For me, it's 12 to 16 hours. You don't fall off a cliff at the end. You just are able to relax and chill and get a good night's sleep. But what a difference it makes when you're not feeling motivated, or when you don't feel like you can execute, or you don't have the mental endurance, right? That cognitive endurance to be able to keep going when you know you need to keep going, when you know that if you drop this thing right now, you're not going to be able to get to it tomorrow because you got eight meetings lined up and those things. So yeah, it's a state change, state optimization framework, not a pill you take to get, to focus. That's so anyhow.
No, I mean, that's a great explanation. I'll give a couple other ones to kind of like round that off. Is first off, people often ask me, they're like, well, are these addictive? Like, am I gonna get hooked to them? And I was like, well, the best way I can put it is, do you love the feeling of working out? It's like, like when you're working out, how do you feel? I feel great. When you're not, you feel like crap, right? So it's like good things have a dependency or a codependency in a way, but it's not like an addictive format. It's just like, I know I can tap into a state. And what I often tell people, it's like, first off, it's like a light switch for my brain. In the morning, I know that however I'm feeling in that day, I could be feeling really great or maybe just a bit lower. Maybe my energy's a bit down. I know at 9 o'clock, if I have some of these, 9 o'clock, I'm good to go. If I have a meeting coming up, I want to be verbally more fluent, like a podcast or just whatever I'm doing. I can dial that in with a formula, because there's like 9 different formulas we have and probably counting within a box that you can get. And you can dial it in and think about the do not disturb on your computer. It's like a do not disturb for your brain. Your brain just like focuses in. It's like flow state. We've all had that experience where you're like, your energy's good, you're vibing, you're totally immersed in your work. And it's a way to monetize your mind. So high performers love this stuff because everyone's competitive. They want to get more out of like their day, their minutes, whatever they're doing in that particular, period in their life, trying to make more money, trying to be a better family man, trying to get better sleep. What I really loved what you said, as far as people don't know the difference between feeling like crap and feeling good. If you don't know the difference, you just accept that other state is how you actually feel. It's like, everyone feels like this. It's like, there's a better way. There's a better way. And once you experience it, you're like, oh my God, I've been living like that. I've been experiencing this brain fog all the time. I didn't have to. I've been doing Monster Energies and having these wicked caffeine crashes after, and everything else that I'm getting from these bad chemicals. It's like, there is a better solution. And I recommend it to everyone, as far as if they're trying to get more out of their mind, but also plug into states on demand. There's nothing else that I've had that meets what this product does. And I think we still have the app going as well. Like, you can dial in formulas, which was really cool. For me, it took around 3 months for me to dial in the perfect formula. Like, the first month was great. Second month was great, but then you're actually doing feedback in the app to say, I like this, I want a bit more of that. And you don't have to have any idea what you're talking about. It's just like a happy face spectrum of like, I loved it, or it wasn't the greatest. By month 3, man, like, I was dialed in, and, I knew exactly what I was getting in my box from then on. And I was like, do not ever change my formula. I'm dialed in. So every feedback form, like, no, don't touch anything. It's perfect right now for me. And to get that level of customization with any other nootropics, it's just not possible. Even though some people claim to do it, I don't think they're actually putting in the work that we're doing, as far as like Mr. Robots and all the things that you guys are doing. You guys used to make handmade pills. And I think that there's some that maybe you still do. Like, no one's doing that stuff. I mean, it's incredible.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Hold on. I think we almost glanced over something that is super hypercritical. Let me grab something. Hold on.
Yeah. We'll pause for this intermission.
Sleep is the world's most powerful stimulant. Sleep is the world's most powerful stimulant. People are addicted to the wakeful hour activities and the wakeful hour energy and all the rest. But without sleep, your neurochemical balance is off. Your recuperative, both neurological and physiological recuperative cascade is shot, and you start running into negative. This is where you start aging really fast. So one of the things that we have done over the last few years is focus on what are the things, like what's the biggest problem with sleep? We'll call it excess melatonin. And that's kind of been the go-to for, decades, has been melatonin. And what we did is we put together a system. We now have a capsule 2 coming out really quickly here. But we put a system together that helps you get into what's called parasympathetic mode. Sympathetic is fight or flight. Parasympathetic is the rest and digest. And we built a system to get you into a parasympathetic mode. So now your level of energy is lower, you're relaxed, your stresses are reduced, your racing mind is now settled down. And we do that through this combination of neurochemical precursors in a product called Sleep Breakthrough. It's an incredibly delicious. Take a couple of scoops of this, put it in just a couple ounces of water because you don't want to get up and pee in the middle of the night. And I whisk it and then take that down. 30 minutes later, you'll start feeling your eyes get a little bit heavier. It's really great. And then to pop it to the next level, we have a thing called Dream Optimizer. And Dream Optimizer takes and uses a microdose. In fact, it's 1/3 of the typical minimum recommended dose of melatonin. And you can even go below that because it's a spray. It's a sublingual spray, so it doesn't go through first pass metabolism of the liver. It goes right into your tongue. It gets into the membranes in the tongue, and your capillaries pull it away, and it gets into your bloodstream. It's great. But more important than the melatonin are like the California poppy seed extract and some of the other components that actually get you into a really sustainable sleep state with a high REM cycle. So if you use an Oura Ring or use a Whoop or a Fitbit, so you know what those factors are. So the delta or long-term sleep, right, and your REM sleep, and it extends. For me, my REM sleep goes from what would normally be about an hour and 15 to an hour 30. It goes to 2:30, and in my deep sleep portion, which typically for me is anywhere from 15 minutes to 30, I get an hour to an hour and a half. So yeah, it's incredible.
That's incredible. Okay, so inside scoop here. I take that every single night. It's my secret weapon. First off, I'm a father of a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. So there's a lot of nights where, it's just not the greatest night's sleep. And I get up at 5 a.m. now. I'm part of the 5 a.m. club, even though I made fun of it for a long time. I was like, I'll never be part of that 5 a.m. club. But guess what? When you have kids, 5 a.m. is a really great time to go work out before they're up. But my secret weapon is sometimes if I'm working a little bit later at night and I go to bed a little bit later, I've got a protocol. It's Sleep Breakthrough. It's Magnesium Breakthrough 30 minutes later. And then Dream Optimizers when my head hits the pillow. Wayne Dyer on meditation on before I go to sleep. I get the equivalent of 8 hours quality sleep in 5.5 hours. And that's incredible to get. You know what I mean? Like I get the 8-hour quality sleep. I only have to sleep 5 hours. I feel great. I don't nap. I check my Oura Ring. I got great scores. And I'm like, guys, and Matt's always suggesting it if you're flying, like you've got a red eye or you just want to make sure you get the quality sleep while the little time you have. But for me, it's like my go-to whenever I know I'm just not going to get that 8 hours. And I'm like, well, and I look at my REM sleep, my deep sleep, my cycles are great in terms of like what I'm getting in quality, and my Oura Ring loves it. So it's just like, I highly recommend it. And what you said as far as sleep being the game changer of life, it is. Like, have you ever gotten a bad night's sleep? Like, it sucks. You're drained for like days. It's like, I don't drink anymore, and I try not to stay up late, but when I do, and if I'm not dialed in with my supplements, let me tell you, like, I feel like the oldest man on the earth because I'm dragging ass for like 2 days.
That's right. Yeah, they call it a sleep deficit, right? So if you have a sleep deficit, this is the currency that's going to pay that debt, and it's really important, and it does work effectively. And you're right. I actually do my magnesium. I do 2 magnesium about an hour before, and I do 1 just before my head hits the pillow into full sleep mode, and that's it. No disaster pants, and it's
no disaster pants. For those of you who don't know, magnesium can cause this, but not ours.
Not ours.
So anybody interested in this, of course, both Mark and I are involved with Nootopia and Biooptimizers, so you can check out all the products at biooptimizers.com. go hit them up. You won't regret it. I have people WhatsApping me and like Slacking me sometimes, like, hey, is that product back in stock? Can I get some more of this stuff? And I'm like, dude, just go to the site. Like, I love you, but I'm not like your dealer here, you know?
Oh,
But
dude, it's a regular. I still have customers from 2012 who hit me up and going, yeah, I see what you're doing with Nootopia now. Come on, man, where's my kit, bro?
well, we love what you're doing, and we're thankful that you're part of the family and everything that you brought to the table with Nootopia and everything else that's coming. So we appreciate you. I appreciate you and your time. I always like to take you through a quick fire round of questions. We talked about this at the beginning. I want to be mindful of your time. So it's the first thing that comes up, first thing, first thought, and short and sweet. I'm going to start off with an easy one. Your favorite food?
Oh man, that's so easy. Sushi. Yep. And that's specifically a sushi roll with seared salmon on top. What do you call it? Spicy tuna, a little drizzle sauce, and avocado inside. Is that specific enough?
I'm very much a foodie, so I can appreciate that. What's like a best memory when you think about something? Like, what's the first thing that pops up?
Oh man, my dad got me a vacuum pump when you're 6 years old and you need a vacuum pump really bad.
Like we all do.
For doing science experiments. Yeah. And I was trying to do these what's now called extraction technology. Back then it was just boiling water at below freezing and using doing high voltage. So my dad wrote, and he said, just write me a note, put it on my truck, because he worked in heating and air conditioning. Put it on my truck and I'll get you a vacuum pump. We got a broken one at the office. I know you can fix it. And so you go off every day, and I'd write him a note. It said, Dad, don't forget the vacuum pump. Love, Mark. And then every day, right? And wasn't a sticky note, it was just a little cardboard square. And then one day, about a week and a half into it, I come out to his truck first thing in the morning, before he's made it out of the driveway. Come out to his truck and it says, Dear Mark, when you learn to spell vacuum correctly, I'll get you the pump. Because I was spelling it VACUME and it's VACUUM, and it was great. So one of my
awesome.
favorite, yeah, it's great.
That's awesome. I can just imagine your kid is asking for vacuum pumps, built-in lasers. Like that's a cool kid, man. Okay, so if Mark's living in a different dimension right now, or in this world here, what is another story for your life that you would have liked to have written? What else would you have been doing if you had more time or just a different access to a different dimension here?
I kind of wish I dropped out of high school after my sophomore year. I played state tennis and then dropped out, and I now envy. I've met a lot of really, really cool college educated PhDs and MBAs, and I've worked with a lot of really great venture capitalists and angel investors and the rest. And I kind of wish I would have hung in there long enough to do that route, because it took me a long time to get the confidence I had credibility with these guys right away because I had founded companies, but I didn't have the confidence to be able to speak to it. Those are two different things. It took me a long time, but yeah.
Okay. I was expecting like Guitar Hero guy on stage, but
I did.
You went the other route on that one.
I was in a Jesus rock band in the 80s.
Nice.
And, yeah. And I actually was on Accutane at the time, which is an acne drug, a really bad acne drug, and I was bodybuilding. So a great convergence of all that, right? So I was going from 135 pounds to 215 pounds, and I'm in this nylon outfit, and we're doing Triumph, a Canadian power trio, a song called "Fight the Good Fight." Great tune, especially we're in front of a bunch of Jesus freaks.
Love it.
And I hit the top note, which is a really, really high. Rick Emmett, the lead singer and guitarist, is also an incredible tenor that you would say is a soprano, right? Alto soprano. And I'm hitting this note, and I crack right here because it dries your skin out so bad from here to here. So I'm bleeding a bit, and these kids in the audience, these young, kids, impressionable Jesus freak kids, are looking at it going, "Oh my God, Satan!" So that was my combination Jesus freak Guitar Hero story.
What's your best productivity hack these days?
Really, it's that state optimization where I look at the project ahead, and then I visualize the product, what it takes to complete it. So one, I don't miss any steps. I use Google Keep to just kind of outline really quick because it's on me and it's on every machine I've got and everything. And then, and that seems to be really powerful because, as they say, every super performer has. If you ask a crowd of super performers, like what's their hack, they hold up a yellow pad and a pen, and they go, "I write down the things that I want to get done, and I knock them off the list visually with a cross out and a star and a happy face, or whatever it is." And I think that is really, really important because it's not hard for your day to run you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super important to be in control of that. And to even get pissed when somebody tries to hijack you and you realize in the middle of the dialogue that you're now committing to something that isn't on your list, that doesn't have to do with your definite major purpose, and that isn't in alignment with the collective goal or the individual goal. It's just you taking over their job.
Yeah. Interesting. I like that one. Well, you're 63, which I would have put you in your 50s. So you look amazing, by the way.
Thanks, brother.
So great job at that. You're technically in the retirement age, I would say, right? But you're not retired. So
yeah.
What do you want to do in your traditional retirement years? Like, what are you doing, or where do you want to continue to move into as you continue to progress?
What a great question. So years ago in the late 80s, I had kind of a spiritual epiphany. I had left the traditional church and started kind of investigating, I had studied TM, transcendental meditation, when I was very young. I had my first TM experience when I was 8, and then followed it from then. But, and I still use the breathing exercises as a way to help get me into a Zen state, which is great. But one of the things that came to me one day in a kind of a meditative trance was I was called to make a monumental contribution to every life I touch. So, and that sounds like really, blown up or whatever, but what it really meant was I needed to be very sensitive and listen to what the needs were of the people around me. And in whatever capacity I could contribute, I needed to try to make a positive impact. And I think that as a result of the people I've met through Bioptimizers and then, I've got incredible legacy of 37 years or whatever of business. So I've got these great friends and associates, I think our collective power is much greater, not to do a Marianne Williamson quote or anything, but I think our collective power is much greater than we think and much greater than we believe. And I think that we now have the opportunity to shift the needle on what's going on, whether it's politically or spiritually or physiologically. And I do believe that if we can make the kind of instrumental impact that we do at Bioptimizers, where we literally have a meditation we do every week, right? To make biological optimization available to every soul on earth. I mean, that's not just a throwaway thing that we say to try to keep everybody in alignment. It's something I think we inherently believe. And I think that I'm uniquely positioned. I let my hair grow gray. I was really afraid of it. I let my hair grow gray just like 6 months or a year ago. And I did that in fear because I was fearing that, oh shit, I'm actually acting my age. Well, I'm not acting my age, but now I get respect from, I used to get respect from the girls. Now I get respect from people looking for insight. And I think that it becomes a superpower and a tool that you can use to be able to get people's attention and hold it and say, oh, maybe that guy actually has a little bit of wisdom and he's not trying to play a role that he's not fit for. So I think that's part of it. And I'm going in, sliding into home base in a DeLorean, in a hot rodded Tesla, at whatever age, my things start failing. I'm fighting this thing called aging and called, life. Brian Johnson's "Don't Die." I might as effing live.
Yeah. I agree with that. That's great. Yeah, I mean, just to kind of go on that too, like I went through a lot of solitude, I think, growing up, and just thinking that everyone's kind of against me. And through the working with Bioptimizers, working with Matt, working with brain training experts, learning that we're all connected, and that, having that interpretation of life now has really served me a lot better. And I just, my guard's down more, I trust more, I love more, I have more people in my life that love me. So it's great. And listen, gray hairs, I'm getting them too. I also do I dye them? What do you do with them? So I've just given up. I'm eventually just all be gray and I'll look as good as Mark here.
I love it. There's two things where we are doing, both Matt and I are taking one of the compounds that Brian Johnson recommends for to kind of reverse that, because that's a hydrogen peroxide issue in the cell, right, at the base of the hair follicle. But that, and then there's a form of D-ribose, a very specific form of D-ribose that they just found is more effective than minoxidil in retaining hair and reversing hair loss. So I've got some of that coming in. I'll make sure and get some your way as well.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
If it regrows some hair too, don't forget to send me anything of that. Okay.
You got it, bro.
What book changed your life?
Well, we talked about The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield, the trilogy from Isaac Asimov when I was young. There was his incredible trilogy, which basically has the robot rules and things like that. It applies more today than it did back then. Those are great. The Boxcar Children, and this is silly, right? The Boxcar Children and a bunch of books. Black Like Me, which was a late 50s, early 60s, I think 1960, 61. A journalist in, this is a real true story, journalist in Texas, in a little town in Texas, dyed himself and used a first version of melanotan, melanotan 1, melanotan 2. So he had melanotan 1, and he used that, and he became black. He shaved his hair off, became black, and then he went to the South, to Mississippi, to feel like it. What does a black person feel like in a white society that is prejudice? And that was very powerful. And then on the heels of that, I read a book called Invisible Man, Ralph Ellison, which is about being black in the ghetto of New York at the time, the Bronx, I think is what it was, and about him feeling invisible and kind of describing that process. And that led to when I was young, when in 1981, I went to Cabrini Green, which is the most notorious projects in the world and in the US at the time, in Chicago. And I went to the projects to see what it was like to be there. I just spent one part of a day. It was scary as hell, being a white boy in an environment that he didn't fit. Those were really transformational. And then the business books, dude, they go on forever. Almost anything from Seth Godin at the time. Jeff Walker, Launch, I think was really powerful for understanding how products, in the early days, Frank Kern and his stuff, I think was really important on the e-commerce side. And then there's a million, God, I'm a reader, by the way. I still do.
Same.
But those are the kind of things. And then, I have to say this one. So, The War of Art, in getting past the shit that keeps you from doing the thing that you were called to do. Super important book, super fast read. Highly recommend everybody read it. The Dip, if you happen to be an entrepreneur, The Dip from Seth Godin is about the point, we call it no man's land here at Bioptimizers, where the company is going through these challenges that are inevitable whenever you're in a fast growth environment, and how to make it through, how to recognize what the other side looks like so that you and your team can actually get there. Really, really, really important book. Again, another quick read, maybe 80 pages, 90 pages, super good. And then there was a creative book. What is the name of it, Joey? You might know it. It's Where Morning Pages Came From. But Morning Pages is a way of writing. It's a way of flow writing without your mind engaged. And you do it first thing in the morning. You wake up you just maybe you pee. And what you do is you take 3 sheets of paper and just write as fast as you can the thoughts that filled your mind. Whether it's the dreams that night or whatever. Don't edit. Don't use punctuation. Just write and do the front and back of those pages. And it's amazing how it frees up your mind. You may never read those pages, but what it does is it gets rid of the stuff that's been occupying your mind that you don't even know. The Artist's Way. The name of the book is The Artist's Way. Julie Cameron.
Damn. Okay. I just added a bunch to my reading list, because usually I ask this question, I get one book. I got like 10, which is awesome. But it's my selfish way of finding new books. And you mentioned, I think, every single one of them I've never heard of, or like never read or heard from a guest. But
I'll send you a list. I'll send you the list and a link.
Appreciate it. I love Audible because I don't have time to read, but I have time to walk. And if I'm doing stuff that doesn't require a lot of the mind, I'm just constantly devouring books. So I love that. Let me ask you one last question here. This is, this is the 1 year celebration question. So what are we doing 1 year today? We're meeting back up. What's on the docket that we're going to be celebrating?
Oh, dude. So one of the things that we've been doing, is when in the first 3 years that I was here, we were launching anywhere from 22 to 27 products a year. And then out of that, we would get a handful of really clear winners and things that really made a monumental difference in people's lives. I think one of the things we're doing is we're creating cool technology. Some of it is hardware, some of it is software, some of it's integrated, like an EWAT, an exercise reduction therapy system that is so above what is currently available on the market. Some of these kinds of things, and a green light therapy for pain relief, for chronic pain relief. These kind of, fringe technology things that we're doing. But more important, instead of doing a quantity of releases every month to try to keep up with that kind of a stream, we're spending more time and more focus on really diving deep into the things that are going to make the greatest impact, positive impact on people's lives, that are sustainable, that address the seed to supplement kind of motif we're working on, where we're understanding the farms that are growing the crops that are being extracted into the compounds that we're using in our products, and having that relationship with those farms and other things for not just sustainability, which is super important, but also to understand and to be able to manage the quality of the output of that. And I think what we'll see is more deeper, committed innovation in fewer products that make a greater impact on the world. And that to me is freaking exciting. So when we meet in a year, the products that we're able to talk about, and the systems and the people, and the people that have been influenced by this, and the people that have come into our group, not just internally in the company, but people that connect with the company and understand our mission is bigger than making vitamins, and supplements. I think that's the thing that is going to be, kind of front and center. Because there's people that come to me, and I know they come to you as well, who say, "Thank you so much for changing my life," or they're hyper evangelists like QQ on Facebook, people like that who finally found that thing inside of them that was able to be unearthed because they took a supplement and it cleaned up a problem that they had, that they didn't even maybe know they had. And as a result of it, that thing that held them back, that baggage they were carrying, that luggage, that Samsonite, supersized luggage suddenly fell away, and they were able to sprint at full speed into the thing that makes meaning for them. And I think that's what we're going to be able to talk about. We're going to be able to talk about a dozen people who have impacted us because we were able to contribute to their lives.
Well said. And with that, we'll cap off this interview. Mr. Noots, Mark, I was going to say Marco Noots, but we didn't get a chance to ask you about how you got Mr. Noots as your name. We'll have to save that for episode 2, I guess.
Love it.
But I appreciate you coming on today. It was so much fun talking to you. And I love your energy and everything you're doing as far as positive impact. And the level of enthusiasm you have at 63 and something you've been doing for as long as this is incredible. So I just want to appreciate and commend you for that.
Oh, thank you, brother. No, ditto. And I'm so glad you've got this platform. I'm super excited about by the way, the direction of your podcast and the direction of your relationships, and really, really unearthing the power behind the influencer, not just the influencer economy, but the individuals that make up influence, and how they got there and why they got there and what they're doing and how they're extending their reach. And then the big thing, I had a talk recently with Josh Trent talking about what's next. What's the post-influencer thing going to look like? How do we continue to build individual voices that have not just influence and power, but they understand the power that they yield, and how do we put it to work for good?
Interesting. That's a whole other episode, I think, now. Man,
we'll turn the mic around and the camera around on you, Joey.
I love that. I look forward to it. I look forward to going down and seeing the lab and getting to chat, play some guitars, do whatever you got going on down there, lift some heavy weights.
Dig it, man. All right. Thank you, brother.
All right, guys.
We'll talk soon.
It's been awesome having you on the podcast. And again, check out bathbuzz.com, Nootopia. Get dialed in, full spectrum supplements. And trust me, it's going to monetize your mind like nothing else will. So we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Peace out.